We don't always notice the moment something turns. It doesn't usually sound like a crash. It sounds like silverware touching a plate, or a laugh that arrives half a second too late. This story didn't announce itself. It waited. It watched. And then it stayed quiet while everything else spoke. Eleanor Nell Whitmore manages asset structures for multi-generational families. She is the person wealthy families call when they need their legacy protected from their own impulses. What happened to her mattered not because of the money, but because of what people assume when they think no one important is listening. I arrived at my mother's house 10 minutes early. The dining room smelled of roast chicken and lemon polish. My mother, Patricia, was still in the kitchen, humming a song that was drowned out by the clatter of pots. "Hey," Jonathan said, brushing past me with his phone in his hand. "You made it." I said I would. I told him. Vanessa leaned in for an air kiss that didn't quite land. "Nell, you look comfortable." "I am." She smiled as if that confirmed a private theory. "Still keeping things simple." "I see. It must be nice not to feel the pressure to perform." I shrugged and set my bag down. The ring caught the light as I did. It was a 1920s Art Deco piece, handcrafted in platinum, a metal that carries a heavy, silent weight, unlike the flashy brightness of white gold. At the table, Maddie sat scrolling through her phone. 15. All elbows and certainty. "Hi, Aunt Nell," she said without looking up. Vanessa poured the wine. "So," she said, glancing at my plain navy sweater. "Jonathan told me you're still doing accounting." "I manage asset structures for multi-generational families," I corrected. There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough for Vanessa to decide it was a fancy way of saying bookkeeper. "Oh," Vanessa said. "That sounds stable." Dinner proceeded with the practiced grace of people who avoid the truth. Vanessa talked about Maddie's acceptance to Eastbrook Conservatory. My mother beamed from the head of the table. "We're so proud," Mom said. The scholarship they offered was such a blessing. Vanessa straightened her shoulders. "Well, merit always finds a way." "Patricia." "The system recognizes talent." I kept my eyes on my plate. I knew the system intimately. I had designed it. Maddie finally looked up, her eyes landing on my hand. "That ring," she said. "Is that real? It looks dull." "It was my grandmother's," I said. "It's platinum. It doesn't sparkle like modern jewelry." Vanessa laughed, a light, dismissive sound. "She's always worn that old thing. I've told her before. She really can't tell high-end costume jewelry from the real thing." Maddie reached for my hand. She turned the ring, frowning. "Mom's right. It looks like something from a flea market." I started to pull my hand back. "Maddie, please," just then. My mother headed back into the kitchen to fetch the birthday cake. The swinging door muffled the room's noise. In that pocket of privacy, Maddie stood up. She walked 3 steps to the kitchen trash can, leaned over, and dropped the ring inside. "Fake things belong in the trash," she said, her voice clear and devoid of doubt. Jonathan snorted, eyes still on his phone. Vanessa smiled, a silent endorsement of her daughter's honesty. I didn't scream. I didn't reach across the table. I simply looked at the space on my finger where 80 years of family history had been. From where they were sitting, it was a joke. From where I was sitting, it was the end of a quarterly payment. After the cake was cut, the room loosened, plates stacked, chairs shifted. My mother moved between guests with a dish towel over her shoulder, apologizing for nothing in particular. Vanessa leaned against the counter and watched me rinse my hands. "You didn't have to take that so seriously," she said. "Maddie's just a kid." I dried my hands and folded the towel back where it belonged. "She's old enough to know when to stop." Vanessa tipped her head. "You know how teenagers are. Dramatic, honest. Honesty doesn't require cruelty." Jonathan stepped in, already halfway into a compromise. "Let's not make this a thing. It's Mom's birthday," my mother called out. "What's not a thing?" "Nothing," Jonathan said quickly. "Just deciding on coffee." Maddie drifted back in, phone in hand. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. The moment had done its work. Vanessa lowered her voice. You've always been sensitive about stuff like that. About my grandmother's ring, about appearances. She said, you don't really care about those things. Do you? You're more practical. I watched her pour coffee into a cup she didn't intend to drink. I care about what I care about. She smiled, satisfied, like that proved her point. Well, Eastbrook will change Maddie. That environment teaches polish. Jonathan nodded. It's a big opportunity. It is, I said. My mother handed Maddie a gift bag. Tissue paper rustled. Everyone leaned in. Maddie smiled the way she'd practiced. Thank you, Grandma. Vanessa squeezed her shoulder. We're so grateful the funding worked out. The system really came through, Jonathan added. I took a step back. Let the noise pass. The room felt smaller than before, like furniture had been moved while no one was looking. From the doorway, someone might have missed it. The way words landed, the way no one circled back, the way silence kept getting used as padding. I picked up my bag. I should go. My mother frowned. Already early morning. Vanessa touched my arm. Don't worry about the ring. It's just jewelry. I nodded. I know. Jonathan walked me to the door. You okay? I'm fine. He hesitated, then nodded, relieved. Good. Outside. The air was colder than I expected. I sat in the car for a moment before starting it, hands resting on the wheel. The ring felt heavier than it had earlier, or maybe I was finally noticing it. I drove away without looking back. I didn't open my laptop that night. I set my keys down and sat at the kitchen table until the house settled into a heavy, ringing silence. The ring sat before me on a linen napkin, clean and intact, its platinum surface catching the dim overhead light. It looked the same as it had for 80 years, indifferent to the trash it had just inhabited. My phone buzzed. Jonathan. I watched the screen glow, then fade. I didn't have the energy for his apologies, which were always just requests for me to be less sensitive. The next morning, I was at my desk by 7. My assistant, Sarah, leaned into the doorway, her expression unreadable. Margaret Hale called from Eastbrook. She sounded official. I'll take it when she calls back, I said. Around noon, the line clicked open. Margaret's voice was the auditory equivalent of a starched collar, precise and devoid of unnecessary warmth. I understand there was a family gathering recently, she began. There was. The Arts Legacy Trust is scheduled for its next quarterly disbursement in 10 days. Margaret continued. The Young Talent Grant for Madeline Whitmore is the primary line item. I wanted to confirm if there were any adjustments to the donor's intent. I am reviewing the file today. Margaret. I'll notify you of my final decision by EOD. Understood. I'll stand by. After we hung up, I looked at the folder on my screen. I had structured the trust through a third-party donor-advised fund to ensure Maddie's growth was driven by talent, not obligation. But Jonathan and Vanessa had interpreted anonymity as an endorsement from the universe. Jonathan called an hour later. Vanessa is stressed. Nell. She thinks you're overreacting about a piece of jewelry. It wasn't about the jewelry. Jonathan. It was about the dismissal. Look, he shifted tactics, his voice dropping into that persuasive tone he used for sales. Maddie's at Eastbrook. That's a $40,000 a year win. The system recognized her. Don't ruin her momentum because of a bad joke. The system, I asked quietly. The grant, he said, dismissively. The young talent thing. We signed the paperwork. It's all automated. The point is, she's elite now. She belongs there. She belongs where she is earned. I said, exactly. So let's just move past this. I've already moved, Jonathan. You just haven't seen the new coordinates yet. I hung up and slid the ring back onto my finger. It fit perfectly. The system had worked exactly as designed. I didn't say anything when Maddie walked back from the kitchen. She slid into her chair like nothing had happened, thumb already moving on her screen. Vanessa poured herself more wine. Jonathan leaned forward, elbows on the table, asking my mother if she wanted another slice of cake. I stood and went to the kitchen. The trash can was still open. Someone had tossed a napkin on top, like a lid. I moved it aside and saw the ring right away. Platinum doesn't hide. It was resting against a coffee filter and a chicken bone. I picked it up and rinsed it under the faucet. Cold water. No rush. My hands were steady. I set it on a paper towel and dried it carefully, the way my grandmother used to. Dab, turn, dab again. Behind me, someone laughed. The sound carried. Vanessa's voice floated in. She didn't mean anything by it. Jonathan added something about kids and phases. No one came into the kitchen. When I walked back, my mother was lighting the candles again. She smiled when she saw me. There you are. Thought you disappeared. I was washing my hands. She nodded and went back to arranging plates. She hadn't seen it. That almost hurt more. Maddie glanced at the ring when I sat down. Her eyes lingered for a second. Then she looked away. Vanessa leaned closer. You don't have to be so quiet about it. If it's damaged, we can replace it. It isn't damaged. Well, she said, shrugging. That's good. Jonathan reached for the cake knife. Who wants seconds? I raised my hand. I'm going to head out. My mother looked startled. Already. We haven't even opened gifts. I've got an early morning. She frowned but nodded. Drive safe. Vanessa stood and hugged me, light and quick. Really? Don't take it personally. I picked up my bag. I'm not. At the door. Jonathan hesitated. You sure you're okay? I am. He searched my face like he might find something familiar there. Then he stepped aside. Outside, the porch light buzzed. A moth circled it once, twice, then disappeared. I sat in my car with the engine off and the ring in my palm. It was warmer than it should have been. Or maybe that was just me. Later. When I got home, I placed it on the kitchen counter and turned on the overhead light. The stone caught it at an angle that didn't sparkle the way people expect. It never had. That was the point, my grandmother used to say. If it shines too hard, it's trying to distract you. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I made tea and let it steep too long. My phone buzzed again. Jonathan's name. Then Vanessa's. I turned the phone face down. The ring stayed where it was. Exactly where I could see it. The email took less time than the kettle. I logged into the secure portal for the Arts Legacy Trust. Everything was exactly as I'd left it precise. Funded and conditional. I pulled up the private donor agreement, the document Jonathan and Vanessa had signed, without a second thought. Blinded by the $42,500 annual credit, Margaret Hale answered on the second ring. I was expecting your call, she said. Her voice was flat, the sound of a woman who dealt in facts, not feelings. I'm exercising the termination provision, I said, effective at the close of the current quarterly cycle. A pause. On what grounds I am invoking the morality clause? I replied, my voice devoid of tremor. As sole trustee, I've determined that the beneficiary's conduct constitutes a material breach of the donor's ethical standards, specifically, the willful destruction of donor property. Understood, Margaret said, her tone shifting to one of legal compliance. Under the terms of the trust, your discretion is absolute and non-appealable. Do you want us to draft the notice? I'll handle the formal notification. Just prepare the tuition reversal. The kettle clicked off. I let the tea steep until it was dark and bitter. My phone buzzed Jonathan again. I ignored it and typed the final email. I didn't use his name. I used the language of the system, pursuant to Section 8.4 of the Arts Legacy Trust. Notice is hereby given of the immediate cessation of all future disbursements. Funding for student number 2847 is terminated due to a violation of the morality clause. This decision is final. I hit send. When Jonathan finally reached me an hour later, he sounded breathless. Nell, the school portal just locked us out. It says funding revoked. What did you do? I followed the contract. Jonathan, what contract? It was a scholarship. It was a gift with conditions. I said, you taught Maddie that some things have no value. I'm simply showing her the cost of that assumption. Vanessa is going to lose it, he whispered. Then I suggest you start looking for a new way to pay for Eastbrook. I replied. The quarter ends in 10 days. I hung up. The ring stayed on the counter, catching the light. It looked more real than ever. The call from Eastbrook didn't come to me first. It went to Jonathan. I knew because he called less than an hour later. Voice tight, words stacked too close together. They just contacted us, he said. Admissions, finance, someone from development, all at once. I stayed quiet. They're saying the funding ends next cycle, he continued. That we have 30 days to submit payment or Maddie's enrollment won't carry forward. That's the standard notice. You knew it would land like this. I knew the timeline. Vanessa took the phone from him. I could hear the shift, breathing faster, less control. This is unbelievable, she said. You didn't even warn us. You were notified through the agreement. We didn't know it was you. You didn't ask. She laughed once. Sharp. Because why would we? These programs exist for kids like Maddie, for kids who meet the criteria. She earned that place. She earned admission. I said, not funding. Jonathan's voice came back. Lower now. They told us the total. 3 years. 127,500. Yes. We planned around that, he said. We made decisions. I know. Vanessa broke in again. So this is punishment. It's a withdrawal. For what? One stupid comment. For a pattern. She scoffed. She's 15. And she's learning. Jonathan rubbed his forehead. I could hear it in the sound his hand made against skin. You could stop this, he said. You could reverse it. I won't. A pause. Long enough to stretch. This changes everything, he said. It changes assumptions. Vanessa was crying now. Not quietly. Loud enough to be heard. We'll lose the house, she said. The boat. Everything we planned. I let the words sit. I didn't correct them. I didn't soften them. I didn't fund talent alone. I said, I funded character. That part failed. Jonathan swallowed. You don't have to say it like that. I do. The line went quiet except for Vanessa's breathing. We'll figure something out, Jonathan said. Finally. I hope you do. When the call ended, I sat there longer than I meant to. The room felt smaller. Not claustrophobic. Focused. The numbers had landed. Clean. Exact. They always do. Jonathan showed up at my office 2 days later without calling first. He stood in the doorway longer than necessary, like he wasn't sure whether to step in or back out. His jacket was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. Do you have a minute? He asked. I gestured toward the chair across from my desk. Sit. He didn't. He paced once, then leaned against the wall. I've been running numbers, he said. Talking to the bank. It's not good. I waited. The timing is impossible, he went on. The payment's due before we can liquidate anything cleanly. We just need a bridge. Short term. A loan. Yes, he said quickly. Just to cover the quarter. We'd pay you back. I folded my hands. I can't do that. His shoulders dropped. You won't. I can't. I repeated. There's a difference. He looked at me, searching. You're the trustee. You control the funds. I'm the sole trustee, I said. Which means I'm bound by conflict of interest rules. Lending to a beneficiary's family would violate the trust. You could step around it, he said. Just this once. That's not how fiduciary duty works. He ran a hand through his hair. So, that's it. That's it. Silence settled. The hum of the air vent filled it. Maddie heard us fighting last night. He said quietly, about the boat, about selling it. I didn't respond. She's not sleeping. He added, Vanessa isn't either. I kept my voice even. I'm not available as a financial solution. He nodded slowly. I figured you'd say that. He finally took the chair, sat for a second, then stood again. I didn't think it would come to this. He said, I did. I replied, a long time ago. At the door. He stopped. You still coming to Mom's next month? I haven't decided. He nodded once and left. After he was gone, I closed the file on my desk. Outside my office window, traffic moved the way it always does. Forward, no pauses. I didn't see Maddie for weeks. The news arrived in fragments mostly from my mother, who mentioned with a heavy sigh that Maddie was no longer at Eastbrook. The new studio was a converted storefront nestled between a laundromat and a deli. No mahogany bar, no gold leaf donor wall, just a taped schedule on a glass door and floors that had seen too many decades. I drove past once. Through the window, I saw Maddie stretching alone. She looked smaller without the Eastbrook prestige to inflate her. Later that week, Jonathan's voice crackled through my car speakers. He sounded exhausted. She saw the bank notices. Nell. She heard Vanessa screaming about the boat being repossessed. The truth is rarely quiet. I said. She asked if she should quit dancing to save us money. He exhaled, a ragged sound, and her old friends. They stopped texting the day her Eastbrook email was deactivated. She's realizing that merit wasn't the only thing keeping her in that circle. I didn't offer comfort. Silence was the only honest response to a self-inflicted wound. On Friday, my ring returned from the jeweler. The repair was masterful, but the trauma remained. A faint silver line where the clasp had been reforged. It was a scar, a reminder that some things can be fixed, but never made original again. That night, an unknown number sent a photo. Maddie. Hair matted with sweat. Practicing in the dim light of the storefront studio. No filters. No arrogance. Just work. A follow-up text read, she didn't know who else to show. She knows now. The next morning, I found a hand-delivered envelope in my mailbox. My name was written in Maddie's jagged, adolescent script. I sat at my table, the repaired ring catching the morning light, and began to read. I read Maddie's letter twice. It wasn't neat. Lines drifted. Some sentences stopped and restarted. She wrote about hearing her parents argue at night, about the boat, about her mother crying in the bathroom, about realizing the words she'd used on me were words she'd learned. I thought things were worth less if they didn't look expensive. She wrote, I didn't know you were the one paying, but I know you didn't have to. She didn't ask for the scholarship back. She didn't ask for anything. I folded the letter and placed it under the ring on the table. That week, I made one call, not to Eastbrook, to the owner of the local studio. A short conversation, clear terms, a small arts grant. Needs-based, no names attached. A few weeks later, there was a recital. Folding chairs, uneven lighting, parents holding phones too high. I sat in the back row and kept my coat on. Maddie danced in the middle group. No costume worth mentioning. Hair pulled back tight. She missed a turn and kept going. Finished strong. Looked out into the room like she was searching. Then stopped. After, she found me by the exit. She hesitated. I didn't know you were coming. I wanted to see you dance. She nodded. I'm still learning. I know. She held the moment, then let it go. Thank you. For before. And for now. You're welcome. That was it. No hug. No apology round two. Just space. At home. I slid the ring back onto my finger. The repair held. The mark was still there. It always would be. I thought about what I'd lost, what I'd given, what I'd stopped carrying. Eleanor Whitmore had spent years believing silence was the same as grace. It wasn't. Grace came later, after boundaries. The house was quiet. The phone stayed still. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or applause. They end with clarity. And for Nell, that was enough. We step away here, letting her keep that stillness. If something in her story stayed with you, carry it gently,